Okay. I think we're on. And now we'll just share this over here. All right, I think we're set there. I'm gonna find it. Do you have any announcements to make?
Yeah, well, anyone who wants to join us for a Trump and McAfee type demonstration tomorrow, we've I've chosen in front of the Starbucks at Portage Crossings in Cuyahoga Falls at the corner of State Road and Portage Trail tomorrow, 11 to 1:30. If anyone wants to come out with us, we'll be waving flags and holding signs. I have several flags and about 15 signs, so if you don't have anything, just
There will be signs to share.
yeah, plenty of signs to share.
All right. Anything else we have to mention? I think that's, yes.
Okay. I sent, this is regarding mail-in ballots.
Uh-huh.
I sent in my copy to firefighters credit union, and they said they didn't get it. And I argued with the girl. This came from the post office 1 month later. This is how it came.
Oh, my goodness.
My check, the coupon,
Oh, my.
1 month later.
Just remember, your vote is safe.
As long as you don't use the post office.
Some are safer than others.
I'm going in person.
Yeah, that's why I always encourage people, if at all possible, go in person. I think the best way is to go to your polling location on election day. Barring that, go to the Board of Elections sometime in the several weeks before, which started on Tuesday, and it's running from there. Maria, you did it. How hard was it?
Maria voted.
What was the hardest thing about it? Waiting in line?
What line?
Did you have a lot of people there? So
Yeah.
you can do that.
There were a lot of people there, just walked over.
So she's got her sticker, she voted. So that's good. So, yes, sir.
Cuyahoga County, the parking was a little tight.
Uh-huh.
You might have saw-
You said Cuyahoga County?
Cuyahoga County, yeah. But the line, it moved. It
moved?
It was a long line, but it
Good.
moved steady.
Good. Somebody else over here. Yes, Nancy. Hay.
Maria told me about the ballot box at the Board of Elections. She referred me, I couldn't find his name. There's a big, huge ballot box. It's like a 4 times as big as a regular mailbox.
Yeah.
So I just got my ballot today, so I'm gonna take it directly down to the ballot box. I don't trust the mail.
I'm glad you said that, because if you can't vote or you want to do it that way, because sometimes people like to do that because you get a little more time, you can look at your thing
Yeah, I
better.
wanna look.
But when you take it and put it in that ballot box, there's a judge that just ruled that they've got to have more than one now. And now they're arguing over whether or not they can have another one at another location. But right now, it's having more than one box at the Board of Elections. So they were talking about maybe putting a few out somewhere else.
Well, the nice thing is there's a camera on, the
Yeah.
camera that watches that.
Yeah, so that the problem when you put it elsewhere, if you ever look at those things, underneath it, if you notice, there's a place where if somebody had a forklift, they could just come in there, lift it right up off and put it on a trailer.
Wow.
So, but at the Board of Elections, there's a measure of security. So if they stick one out at a library somewhere in the middle of the night, who's watching it? So again, that would be the next best, is to do what Nancy's gonna do, fill it out, put it in that ballot box at the
29,
board
25, you should have.
for in Cuyahoga County. The other one, what Summit County's on, what, Wolf's Ledges, is it? I think it is. What's that?
Grant Street.
Grant Street, that's right, yeah. Near
And then
Wolf.
Mike Rodney, he just gave me a list of all the Republican candidates, because sometimes the judges stuff, because I can't tell on here.
Yeah, remember
They don't
last,
specify whether they're Democrat.
yeah, for whatever reason, Ohio doesn't let them put it on the ballot. I wish they did. iVoterGuide.com is a good website, iVoterGuide.com. And Nancy, what's your zip code? I'm gonna put your zip code in.
44123.
44123.
I had trouble trying to use that website. I couldn't
Yeah.
get but I think I got the wrong thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, here's the representatives, here's the justices, Ohio Supreme Court, Sharon Kennedy, proven originalist, John O'Donnell, judicial activist. Here's a Supreme Court Justice, Bruner and French. Bruner's a judicial activist, French is an originalist. That's on a state level, but I don't know if this gives a county level, does it? No, I don't see a county level.
What about that guy McCullough? McCullough. He's on a ticket for the, Cuyahoga County.
I don't know who all's on Cuyahoga County.
Oh, I
I'm from
thought
Summit
you
County.
had it.
Yeah, this,
Yeah,
yeah, unfortunately, this doesn't list the county level judges. This just had the state level.
oh,
Yeah, unfortunately, when you get to some of those county levels, oftentimes the only thing you have to go on is when you get the Cuyahoga County Republican ballot, sample ballot, or in some cases, people get the Democrat sample ballot. Like what? Yeah, like one guy, I said, "You've got that all the time," and he said, "Well, I'm thankful because that tells me who not to vote for." Because they probably would not be on the ballot if they were pro-life. So, yeah, so when you get to some of those more local judges, that's kind of what you have to rely on. And, yeah, so that iVoter.com only gets us to the state level. So,
Well, what I did, like 4 years ago, I just went on the internet and put the names of the people that were running, and then they said whether they were.
Right,
It
right,
just took
you
a
can
long
do that.
time. So, yeah, go on the internet, Google the name.
mhm.
Definitely.
Let me see if I can find it here.
I don't know why you want to do trouble with voting, because Democrats can't like it, because the election over with. They've got the number 4, 5 days to manufacture.
Well, we need to vote, so they need to know how many votes they need to come up with after we vote, right? Gotta help them out somehow. Have you gotten any, are you working at the polls? But are you working at the polls?
Yeah.
Have you gotten any information about where we're supposed to be? I've not gotten anything either. Because I don't think we're gonna be at the United Church of Christ this time. I heard that we're supposed to be somewhere different. The last thing I got was saying that we were gonna be given information.
What about that, school board building they closed down there?
I don't know.
They said that they closed it. Permanently.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe they'll have us vote in the town hall. They got that big meeting room there. That'd be a great place to vote.
Makes too much sense.
Yeah, I know. Plenty of parking, why, easy to get into, plenty of room to space out.
I would like to add a comment about the line. There was a line of cars all the way around Board of Elections
Put
building,
there,
but I got dropped off the next block over and I walked over.
oh,
My
okay.
ballot in.
So you didn't have to wait.
And plus there's social distance, so it's not as long as it looks.
Yeah.
Usually when I called up about voting, down the Board of Elections, they said that there was a free place to park on East 30th Street. Internet is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right next to the police station. It's right next to the street.
Well, that and everything else that's on the ballot.
And when it came out of there was about 4 or 5
Because of division, some people work in election day, they don't
You
want
get a spot.
to wait, they want to make sure.
You guys are just waiting.
I'm gonna do it on election day, because I'll have time. I did find that no, this is the wrong one here, never mind, I thought I had what I needed. Okay, for Cuyahoga County, I did find the Cuyahoga County Republicans is CuyahogaCountyGOP.com. And CuyahogaCountyGOP.com. And they have a list here of election information. They have candidates and they have endorsements. And if you look at that, like here's endorsed candidates list, it comes up and here's your congressional, here's your judges, the local judges. You asked about what one?
McClellan. He's running against it.
McClellan is listed here as one of their recommended.
For who?
Common Pleas, General Division.
Republican?
Yeah,
Oh,
so I just thought,
okay.
I thought that was the name you said, that's why I asked, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's on
Now,
here.
there's a
Did you
one.
say
On the Jones, yeah.
GOP?
Cuyahoga County GOP.com.
Oh,
And then right on the page as you come up, it says, election information. Big red thing like that, so you can see it pretty easy. So, that's Cuyahoga County. Let me see if Summit County is a similar name.
Summit County's right beside the election board.
The Republicans, yeah. This side. Okay, Summit County, I had to check because there's a couple Summit counties in different states. There's like Summit County, Colorado, Summit County, Utah, I think or something, but summitcountygop.org, not .com. summitcountygop.org. O-R-G. Yeah, org, yeah, .org. Give me just a moment there. And when you go to summitcounty.gop.org, it comes right up on the front page with their candidates. And now let's try Medina.
That's 340 Grant Street.
Right, that's
Yeah,
their
but you don't
physical
have the
location.
people to vote for.
But he's going online to look up to see who they recommend. All right. Medina is medinagop.org. medinagop.org. Easy. Check out the medinagop.org. There's something you might find interesting on the front page. I don't know exactly what the date of it is. Oh, October 11th, Sunday, October 11th. It would be during the afternoon.
I can't remember. Oh, the rolling out, yeah. Thank you.
I had thought I heard something about that before. I just saw it and reminded me.
Can I make one of you live here? For the folks that live out here in Summit County, I had no clue until about a week ago. But you know that if you have a Republican opinion, you know you're surrounded by Democrats? And I don't mean people. I mean everybody in office is a Democrat.
Richmond.
Yeah. I'm Summit County. Summit County. It was like, I hope
Yeah, well, part of that is the same problem that people in Cuyahoga County have. Because for instance, in Brecksville, right up just over the road here, basically, just past Wendy's and Pilot, there's a lot of Republicans in Brecksville. So it's a pretty strong Republican town, but everybody that represents the county is a Democrat because of the rest of the county. And it's the same thing happens with Summit County because the center of the population is Akron, Barberton, Cuyahoga Falls, they're like these Democrat strongholds. That's the population base. So there are, on the county council, there's Ron Kohler, who's, I think, running for re-election. He's a good guy. I would certainly recommend him personally. I know him. And then I think it's Gloria Rogers, I think, running for Summit County Council. And they're Republicans.
I guess what I wanted to add to that was this good and evil and whatever you name it, there's always going to be good and bad people, whatever. But it just occurred to me.
Yeah, Gloria
I
Rogers.
won't even get into it, but for all that's going on in the world and stuff like that,
Mhm.
I would hate to even associate with somebody that is like, if they, and I don't want to offend anybody, but if you know what's really going on in the world and stuff like that, and they're using the word Democrat,
Right.
you really don't want to be like if I go pay my taxes, I don't want to say something stupid like walk away and say, hey, Trump 2020,
Mhm. Then they drive your taxes in the trash can.
I'm surrounded, so now I don't care.
Mhm.
There's two kinds of Democrats. Democrats and Democrats. The Democrats are the ones that are deceived by the Democrats. But in reality is there's no Democrats because they took over and you just kept it in name only.
There were Democrats at one time, but
But not anymore, not now.
they have officially removed Dodd from the Democrat platform.
Yeah.
You know, so everybody remembers Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah.
How can you not?
That was cool with him.
He was pro-life up until the time he decided to start running for president. In order to run for president, he had to endorse abortion.
Wow, he did.
That's what he did in order to run for president. He was pro-life he was a pro-life Democrat.
Yeah.
But the moment he wanted to try for something national, he had to jettison the pro-life, which means he jettisoned unborn babies for his own political career.
But who said he had to do that?
The Democratic Party, yeah, as you said, the Democrats. Because that's basically the way it is. At the Democrat National Convention just a couple months ago, as well as 4 years ago, they said nobody with a pro-life position is allowed to speak at the convention.
Wow.
That's how entrenched it is in the Democrat Party. So I mean, we have people listening on YouTube, and they're probably saying, "Well, what are you, just like a Republican group? You don't think there's any good Democrats?" There are some good Democrats out there, but they're few and far between,
Right.
and most of them are serving at the local level. Because once you're at the national level, you can't be there and be pro-life. It's hard to be at the state level and be pro-life. I think there may be one or two, but it's pretty debatable and not strongly. And it's in some counties like Cuyahoga County, it's really hard to be at the county level and be pro-life anymore. It's getting further and further down to the local level
Oh, yeah.
because that's where you find your pro-life Democrats. It's at the local level, but by the time they go beyond the local level, if they want to go further, like Dennis Kucinich, they have to make a decision. Do I care for the lives of unborn children, or do I care more for my political career?
Right, yeah.
And unfortunately, what happens with too many of them, like Dennis Kucinich, they say, you know what, my political career is more important than unborn children's lives. And so they become endorsers of abortion. Yes.
And, I'm thinking of making a sign that says Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Unborn Lives Matter.
I make a comment on that.
Yeah.
You better watch what target you put on yourself.
I know.
You eat well and you
Not
think
in my
well.
yard, because I don't own the place.
You're gonna get Nazi signs in your house and everything.
No, I wouldn't put it there. I would put it out.
You know,
I understand what you're saying.
you could put a Biden bumper sticker on your car and you can go just about anywhere and not
Yeah.
worry. But if you put a Trump sticker on your car, you gotta worry about it being keyed, window broken, all kinds of stuff.
I had a Trump sticker on my truck, I never had a problem.
Yeah.
I wear a Trump hat everywhere.
Yeah.
Nobody's made a negative comment to me.
That's right.
And I have a shirt that says Trump.
Yeah, no, that's good, yeah. And I mean, it is possible, depending on where you're at too, but Steve's got something
Yeah,
that's
two
perfect.
teenage girls got put on arrest in Fairview for stealing Trump signs.
You're allowed to put up, they got a Biden sign, but it's not on anybody's property. It's on the,
Oh, you'll see these things pop up along the road all over.
and you
So a
come
lot
off,
of times, as long as nobody removes them, they get away with them.
and you come off the freeway to get onto Superior.
Yeah,
And it's
people
right
put them there at
on
the
you,
entrance ramps.
But it's,
I don't think technically you're supposed to do that, but people do it every election. You'll see them.
Yeah.
And they're there until somebody takes them away.
I was gonna say, in the Republican Party, from local to state to way up there in the federal, are they mostly pro-life in the Republican persuasion?
The Republican Party platform is pro-life. 4 years ago, when they rewrote the party platform, it was pretty strong on pro-life positions before, but 4 years ago, they made it much stronger. In fact, our illustrious governor, John Kasich at the time, had a group of so-called moderate, translate rhinos, that they were going to try to take over the committee that wrote the party platform. And they were pushed out. And that's one of the reasons that he got so miffed and wouldn't go to the convention. Although rumor has it he did sneak in and not let anybody hardly know, but he did sneak in at least once. But he would not participate. He would not welcome the delegates or anything because he was miffed because they got pushed out at the platform writing thing before the convention started. And he was going to make it a much more open to abortion, open to same-sex marriage, all this stuff. But instead, the conservatives made it the most conservative Republican Party platform ever written. This year, the Republican committee writing thing, they looked at that and they said, you know what, we really can't improve on it. So it's the same, basically, I believe it's the same party platform, strongly pro-life, strongly traditional marriage, strongly supportive of Israel, things like that. Yeah, so now you will find, you know, pro-death or Republicans.
Pro-life, you consider life pro-life?
I'm just saying, you're gonna find him, and he ran as pro-life, and to his credit, he did sign the heartbeat bill, which Kasich never would. And then he promptly appointed Amy Acton, a Planned Parenthood supporter, as is that, yeah. So you wonder what kind of a undercover plant he might have really been. But what I'm getting at is the party platform is strongly pro-life, strongly pro-family. It's a really good platform, but the Republicans allow diverse opinion, unlike the Democrats. There are Republicans at state and national level who are not pro-life. That's why automatically, just because there's an R after the name, for instance, in Ohio Supreme Court, Ohio Chief Justice O'Connor is a Republican. Well, let's just put it this way. She's no fan of us. I can't go into too many details, but she's no fan of us and our positions. That's what she is basically, yes. But she's more than just a rhino. She's no fan of us.
Again, yeah.
That's the Chief Justice. She's not up for re-election right now. But you'll see her, you'll see her on the list as endorsed because she's the Republican candidate and they want to keep that position. But she's no fan of us. It's like there's a certain perennial candidate in Cuyahoga County. And I think currently he's serving as Representative Dolan, but I don't need to name his name, I guess. But he is not a fan of us, but he runs as a conservative. I have a particular animosity towards him myself because he was the key person to defeat the Pastors Protection Act in committee. Wow. He's supposed to be a conservative, Dolan is.
Well, he's like McCain.
Yeah, he's kind of like McCain was. He was runs like a staunch conservative, but when he gets in, he sides with the Democrats. He sides against the things that we value often, and in some cases, he's been the deciding. One of the you can make him the deciding vote because when something goes one way by one vote, and he's on the wrong side. Obviously, if he'd have voted the way we would have liked to have seen, it would have went our way. So there are people like Dolan in the U.S. or in the Ohio House, and people like O'Connor in the state Supreme Court, who really are not friends of ours. But they get in there because the alternative is they're running against a Democrat. And you think, well, do I trust the devil I know versus the devil I don't? Wow. Which is the lesser of the two evils? And in some cases, maybe it would be good to see one of those gone so that we can get somebody else in there eventually. I don't know.
Primary.
Yeah.
Put them in the primary.
Yeah, well, that's the most effective place. That's why the primary elections are so important. Every fall, and those of you that have worked at the polls have probably heard this, but every fall, there's the people who come in going, well, how come these people are on the ballot and not, and they'll name off some other people and say, well, It was the primary. Well, I didn't get to vote. Well, yes, you did. You just didn't vote because if they didn't come in and vote in the primary, they didn't let their voice be known, because in the primary, that's where you try to get rid of some of these people.
Yeah.
And that's the most effective place to get rid of these people, is in the primary. I'll give you 2 years ago, in congressional district, 11 that we're in, where Laverne Gore is running against Marcia Fudge. Laverne Gore is a good person. She's going to be on the radio with me somewhere maybe next week or the following week. I'm not sure yet. On Friday. She'll be back again. But 2 years ago in the primaries, when Beverly Goldstein went in the primaries, there was a guy that he put out his postcard to everybody, at least in Summit County we got him, and had a picture with his dog licking his face and everything. This guy was no friend of us, and he was trying to run for that seat as a Republican. Well, in the primary, he didn't get picked. See, that's what we did. We got rid of him in the primary. We went with Beverly. Now, she wasn't the incumbent. She went up against Fudge, who's the incumbent. See, if somebody could have primaried Fudge in the primary there, she would not have been able to run again. And see, that's where the primaries are so important, because you have a smaller race and you got a chance to make your voice known. And if you can get rid of somebody in the primary, there was a sitting Speaker of the House. You got Nancy Pelosi out there. She's going on about how, don't you think the steroids and the medicines that Donald Trump was given could affect his thinking? There's the woman whose face is shot up with Botox. Botulism is a poison. Botox is botulism. They shoot poison in your face. And she's saying that's not muddled her thinking? Well, there was a sitting Speaker of the House that had her position, Democrat, powerful Speaker of the House, and he got voted out in the primary. They primaried him. I wish I about picture his face. It was in the 90s, because we were in Samoa at the time, remember? And he had a very haughty view of the voters. It was like, he was royalty. And another guy was voted out. There used to be a guy, he was from the Chicago area, very powerful Democrat. And he sat on the Ways and Means Committee. And when the Democrats were in charge, he was the chair, which is one of the most powerful committees in the House, because it oversees the budget. And he got primaried one year. And when these people got primaried, they almost wouldn't accept it, because it's like, how dare the voters not vote for me? And, would that would have happened to Pelosi last spring?
Yes.
It could have, but, unfortunately, like most places, a lot of people just don't go to the primary elections. And then they come on November and say, where do these people come from?
But they took them away, didn't they?
Took who away?
The powers that be, because I was supposed
No,
to vote.
took who away?
The primary election, I was supposed to vote.
Oh,
I was supposed to work
they did the primary election, they just messed it up.
Well,
Because you
where was
still
my
could.
job? I was supposed
No,
to
they
work.
took your job away. I was supposed to work too. I had big cases full of ballots sitting in my house. I had to carry them back to Akron.
So I wish I could have
Went
voted.
with somebody
I didn't
to
know,
carry
and I
them
was-
too. So then you had until, what was it? When did they drag that out to, was it May or something? June something. Yeah, they drug it out to June something. You had to mail everything in. And so the vote was there. It's just that they illegally, because it was against all the court rulings, it was against the Ohio Constitution. DeWine forced that through with Acton. Still don't know how they were able to do that, but they did.
Oh, I can
Yes.
say, Governor Whitmer of Michigan, I heard she closed down the churches and probably the synagogues and Muslim mosques as well. Did she also close down a lot of the people's businesses as well.
Yeah, she pulled it down a lot, you know, people, even if you own, let's say you own your house where you're at now, well, so use Nancy as an example. She has a house, but she has her place where she goes in the summer.
Yeah.
The governor in Michigan said you can't go to that place. It's your own place, and she said you can't go there.
Yeah, she said that, yeah.
Because a lot of people in Michigan have, like people who live in town, especially in the Detroit area, the big cities, they'll have property in upstate Michigan where, you know, like people who like to go fishing, for instance, or hunting, they'll have a place. Yeah.
Get away with it.
Yeah,
People
and
in Ohio who had places in Michigan could go up there.
they could, but people in Michigan couldn't. And then, of course, the courts just ruled that all of her stuff is expired. She's illegally perpetuating it. So what did she do? Oh, well, I'm gonna propose more restrictions.
She got away with that.
People let her. The legislature lets her.
They arrested 6 guys.
Yeah, there was a group, yeah, it's up to 7 now, I
Oh,
think.
7? Oh,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
did you see the evidence? They were saying on the internet, oh, she's terrible. We gotta do something.
So, but I don't know why people in Michigan are still obeying her orders because the judge said it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But we've had things here in Ohio that the judges have said is unconstitutional, and they're still doing them.
What if you don't do them? Do you get arrested?
Well, problem is a lot of companies are just going along with the stuff. Try to go into Walmart, right? Steve wants to say something.
Some kind of a kidnap attempt on her.
Yeah, like a killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just saying that.
You know, what's your opinion here? I know it's just your opinion, but what do you think of Governor DeWine? Is he good guy or bad? Is he following the rules? Or is one
Right
person-
now, I think Governor DeWine is a stealth candidate. I think he sold himself to the evangelical and the pro-life people in the election.
Oh, okay.
And when he got in, I think he's trying to ride the fence. But personally, I think he's trying to further the deep state and the globalist
That's what I
agenda.
think. Okay.
That's what I think. I think he's an undercover. He ran and he built a resume to look good. But see, let's go back a minute. George Soros has been for years funding, pouring a lot of money into attorney general races, prosecutor races at the county level, city level,
I follow that.
so that when something happened, this person would be in place to do his bidding. Like sleeper cells. If you ever read spy novels, you know, they'll have a sleeper cell there. Maybe the Soviets during the Cold War had a sleeper cell and they just look like normal Americans until they're to be activated. Hezbollah does that. Hezbollah has sleeper cells in the United States. These are Muslims that they might not even go to the mosque. They might even pretend to be non-Muslims. But they're living here trying to play and fit in and play a role until such time as they're activated. And so if Soros was putting these people in place, and I didn't pick Soros and his funding of attorney generals and prosecutors just at random, because what was DeWine originally?
Attorney General.
He was Attorney General of the state of Ohio, but what was he way back? Before that, Kim,
He's been around.
what was he? He was what was he, a prosecutor for what county wasn't he when he started out? Green County?
Green County.
He was one of these guys that are like the type of people that Soros has funded over the years. They have people, again, this is my opinion, they have people in place that when the right time comes, they can make the right decisions or whatever for the people who have them in that position. So they can come in, you know, you got DeWine coming in out of all of Republican governors. He's the one who's acted the most like the Democrats in these shutdowns and these orders. I just saw him on the news today holding up his mask with this real stern look going, "This allows me to see my grandchildren."
Oh? Oh, baloney.
This right here that scientists say really is really ineffectual in stopping the virus. The CDC said that this does not prevent smoke particles if you're out west in the forest fires from getting through into your lungs. If it don't stop a smoke particle, how's it stop a virus? Yeah, the virus is much, much tinier. Wearing this to keep a virus away is like putting up a chain link fence to keep the mosquitoes out. Except that the chain link fence is probably more effective.
Wow.
But that's not politically correct to say that, is it?
I have a broad question.
Yeah.
Now that I've learned all this stuff, whatever, how do you even know, how do you now, I never used to think that it was like this clear Republican or Democrat. And I'm kind of a conservative, but the idea is that I never just purely thought you would just go with one side. And then with all the deep state happening, I think, you know what, you gotta just go Republican, you know? Now you're kind of pointing out to me that they're not, so how do you judge?
That's
The lesser of the two evils.
Yeah, a lot of times you're going to the lesser of the two evils. 4 years ago, for instance, I voted for Donald Trump for two reasons. One reason, and probably reason number one, he wasn't Hillary Clinton, who was an evil woman who broke numerous laws, because I had the type of security clearance that she had, so I know what it entails handling that material. And I just can't imagine she's still a free woman, because I know what would have happened, and I know what happened to people who mishandled classified material. And then the other thing I was going to say is the judges. There was this backlog of judges, and he promised to vote for nominate pro-life originalist judges.
Yep.
And he's done that.
Yes.
He has done that. And those are the two main reasons I voted for Donald Trump 4 years ago. When he first put his name out there, I thought, man, he's never going to make it. I worried that he was actually put up to it by the Hillary camp in order to sabotage the Republicans.
I was actually reporting to my governor of the state.
Well, yeah, but I was just using that as an example. So I voted him as the lesser of the two evils. That's what you kind of got to go with some of these other things, because the guy that was running against DeWine would have been far worse.
The Democrat.
The Democrat would have been far worse.
He said I gotta do my homework, so what are my questions?
Well, that's why we had that iVoterGuide.com, and then the Ohio Christian Alliance has their voter guide at ohioca.org.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. iVoterGuide.com. Yeah.
The other one?
And that one there, you'll enter in your zip code, and that gives you up to the state level.
What's
The other one is Ohio CA. CA stands for Christian Alliance. ohioca.org.
Got it.
And then when you come up on the page there, let me get this over here, you will see, I believe, their voter guide. Yep, their voter guide will come up with the presidential one right there. And you just click on that, and that'll give you a list of issues and all. And you find that, for instance, yours is like the congressional district that we're in, Marcia Fudge versus Gore, LaGrune Gore. They send out these questionnaires to these people, and then they get the results back, and they use that in public statements, things on their website, their webpage for their campaign. And for instance, on this one right here for the presidential one, the Green New Deal climate change legislation. President Trump opposes that. He's very clearly articulated that. They were going to put on here initially that Biden supports that. But the presidential election, remember what he said? I don't support the new Green Deal. I have the Biden plan, which sounds just like the new Green Deal, but he's never hesitates to plagiarize something good. So on the basis of his public statement in the debate, and the fact that his website says that he supports it, and on the debate thing he said he opposes it, they put unknown. Because where is he? Flipping and flopping all over.
Hillary said when Trump got elected president a few years back, and she said in her disgust, in her haughtiness, in her pride, in her shock, in her jealousy, she said, he's not qualified to be president, he's not even a politician. And that's why I voted for him, because politicians lie.
Best qualification is he
Yeah.
doesn't.
So, yes, sir.
There are, like, if you go on this YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
you could see Donald Trump back in the 80s. He's being interviewed by, I don't know, Barbara Walters or whatever. But he was planning on running for president back then.
Yeah, she talked about it in the past, yeah.
If no one else did it, he eventually would. Yeah, I mean,
And I had some misgivings, and I really didn't expect him to do as well as he did. But now I'm voting for him this time because he's proven, and there's a track record.
Yes, sir.
And see, this is what we do. Sometimes you don't know, and you can leave it. You can leave that blank. You don't have to if you're just not sure. But you pray about it. You look. You kind of try to do some homework, find out some things. But once they establish a track record, President Trump said he'd move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That was passed legislation requiring the president to do that was passed during the Clinton presidency in the 90s. He didn't do it. George W. Bush said he'd do it, and he didn't do it. Barack Obama said he would do it, and he didn't do it. Trump said he would do it, and he did it. So there's a good thing right there. The Johnson Amendment. Now, the Johnson Amendment, the president cannot get rid of it because it's an act of Congress. It's a legislative thing. But he's ordered the Justice Department not to prosecute any churches under the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment is the one that then Senator Lyndon Johnson put in because the Christians in Texas opposed him and almost cost him an election. So that was his retaliatory effort to try and keep them from voicing an opinion in the elections.
so that's like unconstitutional.
Yeah, it is. And that's why the IRS has never prosecuted anybody under the Johnson Amendment, because they're pretty confident they'll lose in court. And if they lose in court, then the Johnson Amendment would be thrown out as unconstitutional. But the IRS knows they've got the bulk of churches in America scared to say anything. So they'd rather have them scared to say anything and tolerate other churches saying something because it's just a tiny percentage, where the bulk of them are afraid. In fact, in so many churches across America, you're not allowed to talk about politics.
Some of them are proud that they're not.
And they're very proud of that. I keep thinking, well, how do you read the Bible and not talk about politics?
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, are you pro-life? Do you think God values? Do you think God has a problem with those that shed innocent blood? Oh, you're talking about politics. I take that outside, right? I mean, you see what I'm saying? How can you not talk about politics?
That's right.
I think I have this book here. Let me see if we got it. Yeah, Christopher actually just said a very true statement, because it takes down the offering. And that's why some pastors won't do it. They'll say, well, I can't do it because we're not allowed to. But they know full well, I'm not going to preach too strongly on the pro-life position because I got some people in my church that are big givers that think abortion should be legal.
A lot
So-
of pastors are changing though.
Yeah,
David
well, they
Jeremiah's got a,
Yeah.
he's got a commercial out. He and his wife.
Yeah.
Talking
Well,
locally.
MacArthur in California would never get involved in political stuff. He's changed a little bit. You know, what was it they used to say, that a Republican is a Democrat that was mugged, you know, or something like that, you know, or a conservative is a liberal that was mugged. There's variations on it, but I was just talking about that. I just happened to think about this book here that I have. This is David Barton, The Role of Pastors and Christians in Civil Government. David Barton, Wall Builders. He's got a lot of interesting stuff, but I was just thinking about this. This is, he's got some titles of some messages that were preached from pulpits in America prior to and at the time of the Civil War. Here is a sermon preached in 1796 occasioned by the execution of Henry Blackburn. So it was preaching on capital punishment, somebody who was executed. Here's another one that was preached in 1851, Moral View of Railroads. These are actually messages preached from pulpits, not from compromised churches, but they went through the Bible because railroads were a big thing at that time. We take these transportation things that we have today for granted, but back then there were people who thought that, this is immoral. We shouldn't be encouraging people to travel like this. I almost got a booklet at a used bookstore one time, and I should have got it just for fun. It was a little booklet by the Southern Baptist Convention in the early 40s on why Christians should not have a telephone.
You mean
a telephone, like the pick it up, dial the old. I'm about 1940s, not a cell phone. I'm talking about a telephone that you picked it up and you spun the thing and you said, Ethel, get me Fred down at the general store. That's what I'm talking about. You know why? It said that the telephone leads to gossip and slothfulness and all manner of evil. And no Christian should have a telephone.
It ain't the telephone's fault.
I'm just saying, this was what the book was written about, the evils of the telephone. And, we look today, we think, why would anybody oppose the telephone? How about when the TV first came out?
Yeah.
Oh, the TV, what Christian would have a television? Well, people oppose things. There were Christians who apparently opposed the railroads back in the 1800s. So here's another one. A message on the infirmities and comforts of old age. So they were addressing the issues of the day that people were, is it society's responsibility to take care of the old and the infirm? Is it the responsibility of churches to take care? You see what I'm saying? So they went into the Bible. What's the Bible say about these things? And yet when you try to do that today, pastors aren't allowed to talk about churches, can't touch on those issues. Well, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And that's just a couple of examples, But yeah, so when you look at some of these people and you look at the track record of people, I still go back to when Obama ran the first time for president, and I had people calling the radio station saying, our church is against abortion and same-sex marriage. Why is my pastor telling me to vote for somebody who's for those things? Wow. I said, well, maybe you ought to ask your pastor that. Maybe he's got something that he values more than this.
Wow.
And it's unfortunately true. Hillary Clinton, I mentioned this on the radio today. Hillary Clinton said that young people are leaving, you two right here, leaving churches because we're judgmental and alienating. This is the same woman that I know. Sorry. Alienated her already. See? But Hillary Clinton in 2015 is the same one that said that basically churches need to change what they believe if they don't endorse same-sex marriage and abortion on demand. And this is the same woman that's now saying that churches are too judgmental and alienating. This is the quote here.
I think she's judgmental.
Well, she said this: a lot of young people are leaving the church in part because the way they understand what Christianity has become. So judgmental, so alienating that they think to themselves, well, I don't need that. And then she said, well, you and me both. Meaning she rejects that. Well, who she's talking about is people like us who take a stand on the Word of God. And when somebody says, well, do you think that person's saved? And we say, well, do I see fruits of salvation in that person? Oh, now you're being judgmental.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what the world says.
Well, what did Jesus say? He came to divide.
Yeah.
Let me see if I still have this verse up here. Here it is in Matthew, as soon as I get back to it here. Oops. I got the one in Luke here. In Luke chapter 12, verse 15, he says, suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth? I tell you nay, but rather division. Well, the division was in preaching the gospel. And let me find the other one here that goes along with this. In Matthew chapter 10, and I can find it here. Matthew chapter 10, he says in verse 34, think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. Now, the sword that he's talking about there is not a physical sword. He's talking about the word of God, which the Bible says the word of God, what? It's sharper than a two-edged sword. And the word of God divides.
Yeah.
It cuts to the between the soul and the spirit. I mean, it's dividing. And oh, you're following these things here. But okay, kept buzzing. So, but yeah, the gospel message is very divisive when you think about it, because a few years back, the United Church of Christ here in town tried to start a what did they call it? A interfaith group. I can't remember the Richfield Interfaith something or other. Yeah, whatever it was they called it. And I was invited to join. Well, I didn't, because in order to join, I had to agree that I wouldn't say there was anything wrong with any of the other groups that were in there. Now, if you're not familiar with Richfield, if you go down the road here just a little bit, there's a big Hindu temple that's just recently been built there. And if you go Boston Mills Road this way, there's a big Jain temple that was built there. If you go over on Broadview Road over here, there is a large Sikh temple that's there. And down on 303 around the corner, there's a little Buddhist thing in there, I believe it is. The only thing we don't have is the Mormon or the Muslims in terms of those different groups. They used to be up here in Brecksville in a stealth mosque on Route 82 up here in Brecksville. They had no signs out front. It was called the Unity Center. They just recently bought a building over in Northfield Center and moved out there. But all these groups were in it. And St. Victor's Catholic Church, which is the Catholic Church in Richfield, was in it. And the United Church of Christ was in it. And the United Methodists were in it. Or not Methodists, Lutherans were in it. The Lutheran Church was in it. And in order to be in it, all I had to do was agree that everybody had their own way to God, their own little path. All roads lead to God. I'm not going to say anything is wrong with the Sikhs, and there's nothing wrong with the Hindus, and there's nothing wrong with the Jain, and there's nothing wrong with the Catholic, and there's nothing wrong with. I had to agree that everybody was valid. So, in other words, I had to give up what I believe about the Bible, when Jesus said, "There's none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved." He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me." I had to give up all of that, subordinate all of that to get along with all these other people. And then every month we were supposed to go to a different faith community. That's what they like to call themselves, faith communities, and celebrate that person's faith community by having a dinner and hear a presentation about what that faith community believes. I thought, man, that would be something. You know, we didn't have a building, but we could have rented the room, I guess, brought them in here, and we could have said, all right, here's what our faith community believes. You're all lost. You're all condemned. There's none righteous, no, not one. You're all on your way to the lake of fire for all eternity. You need the blood of Christ. It's the only way to cleanse you from sin. How would that have gone over?
There you go, being judgmental.
I've been judgmental and alienating. So, yes.
he wrote an article in the Euclid Observer saying that only Christians would go to heaven. And this guy wrote him a nasty letter, this proud guy boasting that I'm a PhD and this and that. And he called them bad, nasty names in the letter.
We were at the Summit County Fair, not this past summer, but last year, I believe it was. The guy that was across the way from us came over and said, yeah, I've been watching you guys all week because I like Christians, but one thing I don't like about you is that you tell other people you're wrong, and that's just not right. Okay, so why is it right when you do it? But that's the way what it boils down to. If you take a stand for the truth, you're alienating and judgmental. But Jesus said that he was going to divide. You know, if somebody is a Muslim and they put their faith in Christ, do you think a little division occurs in that household? How about somebody who is Catholic, who's praying and giving offerings to Mary today, and then they hear that Mary was a sinner and needs a savior, just like we do, and they become a born-again Christian, and they say, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore, that's wrong. What happens in some families there? Division. What happens if somebody is a Jehovah's Witness?
Cool, yeah.
And they actually get saved, and they say the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is not of God, it's of the devil.
Yeah.
What if somebody is a Mormon and they get saved and they say Joseph Smith was not a prophet of God, he was an emissary of the devil? Division happens in those families and amongst those friends. And that's why when he said here in Luke 12, 52, for from henceforth, there shall be 5 in one house divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. The father shall be divided against the son, and the son against the father, the mother against the daughter, and the daughter against the mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. This is division, not because there's somebody's wailing away with a sword, but because somebody's saying the Bible says this, and people are saying, but I don't agree with that. Well, I didn't write it.
You're disagreeing with God.
Yeah, I mean, take up the argument with the author. Well, you're just interpreting it your way. Well, how do you interpret it?
Yeah.
Well, I interpret it such that I don't agree with it. I mean, there's things in the Bible that are hard to understand, but when Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light, no man cometh to the Father but by me, what did he mean?
Pretty exclusive.
He meant, I am the way, the truth, and the light, no man cometh to the Father but by me. That's what he meant.
So I know a lot of Jewish people, so
Mhm.
they went as far as the Old Testament, they didn't go to the New Testament, but they're not going to be saved. They do all the holidays and everything, and they're not going to be saved.
They've not accepted Christ as the Messiah.
Yeah.
And see, that's what happened in that first century. The first generation of Christians, in fact, the first generation of Christians was almost exclusively Jewish people who realized Jesus is the Messiah. And if you go to Romans chapter 11, because this will come up every once in a while in some circles. Well, certainly the Jewish people who hold to the Old Testament teachings and the holy days and everything like that, surely they're going to get to heaven. Well, in Romans chapter 11, Paul's writing about these Jews that have not embraced Christ as their Messiah. And notice the first thing he says, let's go back to Romans chapter 10. That's where I wanted to go, rather. I said 11, but chapter 10 is where we need to start. Verse 1, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for who? Israel. He's not talking about spiritual Israel here. He's talking about the Jewish people. My heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. Very next verse. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge.
Right.
They don't embrace Christ as their Messiah. They're not saved. That's why he wants them to be saved. They may be zealous, keeping all of the Torah laws and the feasts and everything. Verse 3, for they being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves to the righteousness of God. Back in Romans chapter 3, said there's none righteous, no, not one. When we believe in Jesus, the righteousness of God is put on us, on those who believe.
Is that like Dennis Prager, or what's his name?
Dennis Prager, a very prominent Jewish, conservative Jewish commentator. He's got a lot of stuff out about understanding the Bible and everything like that. But he's like this. He is unsaved.
He's a rabbi.
And yeah, he's a rabbi, a teacher. And he's unsaved. He's got a zeal, and he's trying to establish his own righteousness because he said that he believes that God measures somebody on how much good you do. Well, the Bible says there's none good. None righteous, none good. Because we don't compare to God. So then we come down to chapter 11, Romans chapter 11. And he says in verse 1 here, I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. For I am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham and of the tribe of Benjamin. So he's talking about the Jewish people again here. Now, they're not saved, which means they can't go into heaven, but he's not cast them away, which means he's still got a plan for them. And he goes into some more stuff there. But the plan for them, when we talk about Bible prophecy, Daniel's vision of the 70 weeks of years, 69 of them have taken place. We're still waiting for the seventh one. He can't cast them away because he's got to fulfill that final week dealing with Israel. And that's when we're taken up to heaven. The Antichrist appears on the scene, confirms the covenant with the Jewish people, and then that last week of years takes place, and he's going to deal with them. And at the end of that last week of years, as you come down in chapter 11 here, it says in verse 25, for I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, and so all Israel shall be saved. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob, for this is my covenant unto them when I shall take away their sins. And we know we're not talking about spiritual Israel. I've had people try to say, oh, that's spiritual Israel. Because sometimes the term spiritual Israel is used to apply to born-again Christians because we have embraced the fulfillment of all of the Old Testament scriptures. So in a sense, we are fulfilled Jews in that sense. Spiritual Israel. But he says this, we know he's not talking about that. He's talking about the Jewish people that have not accepted Christ as their Messiah, because he says in verse 28, as concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sakes, but as touching the election, they are beloved for the Father's sakes. So God still has a special place for them, but they're not going to get into heaven until they embrace Christ as their Messiah. And unfortunately, the indication is 2/3 of them, somebody had this conversation on the radio recently, I think, 2/3 of them are going to go through the refiner's fire during the tribulation, and only about 1/3 of the Jewish people are the ones that are going to be left that are going to realize Jesus is the Messiah. In Zechariah chapter 12, 13, and 14, it talks about the return of Christ at the end of the tribulation and touches on some of the things that happened during the Battle of Armageddon and all this sort of stuff. And it talks about the Jewish people looking upon whom they have pierced and mourning, because they realize this is the one that we rejected. Our forefathers rejected him. And he says they'll come to Christ. I mean,
Paul's talking about his own
people.
relatives.
Yeah, his own relatives, because, yeah. So it's pretty amazing when you think about it. So the Jewish people have a special role to play that's yet future.
Yep.
The promises are still there. They didn't devolve to the Roman Catholic Church or to the Presbyterian Church or to the Church Universal or some stuff like that. No, the promises are still to them. And they will at some day in the future embrace the Messiah that they rejected some 2,000 years ago. So
The Jehovah's Witnesses say that the 144,000 are Jehovah's Witnesses.
right,
No, they're Jews.
exactly. It says it in the Bible very clearly. But I had a Jehovah's Witness leader tell me to my face that that's not true. In fact, the context clearly is